Hey,
What's up?
I know that, dude.
Yep.
Did I hit recording already? I think I did stop recording. Okay, good. We can always edit out later.
Yep.
All right. Well, hey, we are here today. Welcome to the Raise the Bar podcast. I'm your host, Troy Haynes, the Sky High and Fly guy. And I'm here with my many time guest, Mike Ashton, who it's been a while, Mike, but it's a while since you headed off to coach at Army. Am I still
That's
right
right.
there? You're
Yeah,
wearing
yeah, it's
sweats.
in my second season now.
Second season at Army, and we're getting close, right? It's mid-April. I know
hmm
NC2As is in June. It was when I was jumping anyway,
hmm
early June. So yeah, and yeah, it's been a minute, man. It's good to see you. How
hmm
have you been?
Yeah, it's good to see you too. It's been good. I West Point is definitely a lot more busy than I was at UVU.
Hmm.
Mostly on the recruiting side. Obviously, with the military component of it, it just adds extra layers and extra things that we got to go through to get kids committed.
Right.
um, and then with the whole NCAA roster limit,
Oh,
NIL stuff, I mean
yeah.
we can dig into all of that, but that
Oh,
has shifted kind of the landscape of things everywhere else except here, because we're exempt from that. Our kids don't do NIL, um,
right.
deal share stuff, because the military doesn't
Sure.
allow them to. So we're still rolling with the full roster, and I'm
Yeah.
recruiting and finding all those kids that want to have the chance to get developed, as opposed to, hey, if you don't jump a national qualifier in your first freshman year, then
Yeah.
you're out, and we'll go get a transfer kid. So
That's crazy. The
yeah.
landscape of amateur athletics has definitely
hmm
significantly shifted.
yeah.
And you're excellent to talk to this about. So I have a couple other D1 coaching friends like you. I
hmm
don't know if you've seen any of Nicola Adair's work. She's from Germany. She's jumped at University of Nevada, Reno, and then
mm
graduated, was a graduate assistant for a couple of years, and is now coaching at Cal State Fullerton. So I bumped
yeah.
her to meet early this year, and she's awesome. She's just on point, very technically sound. We talked technique for like a couple hours
hmm
watching these kids jump, and we just saw eye to eye on so many things. And then she's like a 5'7" jump height that jumped 6 feet. So she's legit, right? She was a head
yeah.
lead also. So, but between the two of you, I feel like I've got at least some kind of a pipeline into the D1 coaching reality. Now I'm coaching the D2 level, and
hmm
it's already we do some scholarship stuff, but it's pretty limited. Um, and I remember hearing about it from a couple of the parents, and I'm like going, okay, roster limits. When I was at UCLA, we had a big team,
hmm
and I mean there were 7 high jumpers on the team when I got there. So I was like at the bottom of the depth chart, and
hmm
we never had to worry about anything. At home meets, everybody competed. If you traveled, then
hmm
you had to make the travel squad, right? So that
right.
was the only real form of roster limit that I knew about. And then forever and a day, for that size of a track team, they only had 8 or 12 scholarships. I can't remember what the number was. It
mm
wasn't as many people as there were, So,
yeah.
football has 100, 95, 100, I don't know. And basketball, what, 12 or 15? I don't know how they fill at the end of the roster, those guys, the 30 guys, right? Up
Yeah.
30 seconds to play, you finally get in, right?
Yep.
I don't know if those guys are on a scholarship or what, but the big names are because
hmm
now at the end of every season, everybody flees the ship and goes somewhere else.
It's not even end of the season. They and during the NCAA tournament, was it right after Sweet 16
Hmm.
or Elite Eight? Yeah, the transfer portal opened up, and John Calipari at Arkansas is like, I got to have one-on-one meetings with my guys right now, because we got to decide if they're coming back next year, or are they
Right.
taking a deal somewhere else. And it's like, during the tournament, what are we
Yeah.
doing here? Like, yeah, it's getting crazy. The just the landscape of everything. The NCAA came out and said, yeah, 45 for track, but a lot of conferences and a lot of Power Four teams are saying, no, we're not even doing 45, we're doing 35.
Yeah.
um, just because of money from the school, and they have to pay, scholarships for all those kids. And
Mm-hmm.
it's Gene Auriemma, the head coach of UConn women's basketball, who just won another championship. The thing that I hear from him all the time is, we need to just call it what it is. Like, we're turning this into pro sports. So
Yeah.
if that's what it's going to be, we need free agency. We need, we need contracts.
Right.
We need players association and this and this. And he's like, we're living in this like in between world where we're saying it's amateurism, but it's essentially pro, and
Right.
it's just not working. There's no guardrails or anything. And track is kind of falling into that route. Like, I follow a lot of teams and a lot of coaches on Instagram and social media, and I see, oh, we got this transfer kid from a mid-major or a D2 or a JUCO, and a lot of international kids coming in.
Right.
It's turning into, I mean, the NCAA track-wise was already one of the more premier, pro leagues in the world, but now it's even more and more exclusive. And I don't know what high jump marks are out there, but I've heard pole vault colleges aren't recruiting anybody that jumps under 18 coming out of high school.
That's crazy. Those numbers
Yeah,
are small. Yeah.
yeah, that's two, maybe three kids a year for a roster spot as a high school kid. So it'll be interesting because it's all going to start taking effect this next season and start cutting
Right.
things down. And D1s are transferring down to D2 now, and yeah, everything's changing. It's
Wow.
rapid, but I like being where I'm at because we just get to kind of sit back and see
Yeah.
what happens. So,
Well, talking about it from the perspective of, first of all, getting your kids to go to college, if they're going to
mm,
do something, I think all these moves, it shows I don't want to, I think I'll come up with a new word, irrelevancy, the
mhm,
irrelevance of
mm,
track and field here at the national level, because,
mhm,
as we've bemoaned many times in the past, there's just no money coming in, so
right.
unless you're being seen on TV, you know, pro football, number one, college football, real close, number two.
Mm,
The games are meaningful. Why? There's only one a week. There's not
mhm,
four baseball games or five, and
mhm,
162. Most people don't even pay attention to the playoffs. Same thing with
mm,
basketball. College basketball, there's still only a 30 game schedule. You got a couple early
mm,
season, then you got to fight through your conference, and that makes everything, more heightened. Same thing with football. You can't just, if you're in the SEC or the Big Ten, there's no cakewalk, right, to get in.
none.
So you've got huge TV interest. Every game is being watched and the ratings are going through the roof. The money pours in.
Mhm.
Nobody knows anything about track and field. I, who love track and field, I don't know anything about track and field. I don't have the time to try to figure out who everybody is from all the
Mhm,
different countries and which ones have come over here, because there's a lot of them. We had Elena Kulachenko has been on twice,
mhm,
from Georgia. She's awesome. She
yeah.
speaks English. She's originally from Russia, and she's over here jumping at Georgia. I'm like, more power to them. It's
Yeah.
top stuff. I want to see the best athletes, but it's like,
Mhm,
man, what are you going to do when, and she has the advantage of going to Georgia, SEC school.
mhm,
I'm sure that they get seen on that network, right? You got the SEC,
mhm,
you got the Big Ten, but like you said, it might as well just be professional. And this is where the biggest point of all this, I would just say, is the headline is get rid of the NC2A, all of it. Like the NCAA has no control. They have no power. They
mhm.
they can't possibly go around trying to enforce anything because you've got so many different sports going on at these
Yeah.
levels. There's no way they can be a policeman and come up with all this new, like you're saying, how about some guidelines? How about some, structure? Now,
Mhm,
the cream rises to the top, and competition brings in other things. You got these networks, and the money are going to compete, and so
mhm,
it becomes incumbent upon you as a sport. If something's broken, it needs to be fixed, that kind of thing. And I'm like, well, what are we going to do at track and field? Because they all of a sudden, like you said, they're going, well, hey, unless you're a big school program, right, like Michigan
mhm,
or LSU, and you've got your SEC money pouring in through what usually football, sometimes
mhm.
football and basketball, bring in huge numbers, and then it filters down, hopefully, to your other teams, men's and
Right.
women's, list name of sport here. So
Mhm. Yeah.
if you don't
That's
have
right.
that, where are you going to get that money to do the program? Like you said, you've got to have donors, you've got to have, scholarship money coming in from former
Mhm.
athletes and everything. And again, if you're at a school that's notoriously cheap, don't want to mention
Mhm.
NCAA by name, but they don't like paying people. Just recently, some of the football coaches, and for a while they were paying like three of them in a row because they paid
Mhm.
money, and
Getting
then
rid, getting rid
when they
of, getting rid
fired
of.
them, and they still got to pay them. Oh my
Mhm.
gosh. But then hiring good assistant coaches and blah blah blah. Like, and now you're kind of expected to pay your athletes. And I keep thinking, well, the track athletes were kind of better back in the day that I remember, like more depth, and you might have had more
Mhm.
athletes actually doing track instead of going to football or basketball or other sports. They didn't make any money. There was no money to be
Yeah.
made. That was why indoor was so, Jimmy Howard used to fly around the country and jump, Friday
Mhm.
in New York and Saturday in some other and go there and win $50,000 in appearance fees, blah, 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 which back in the 80s money wasn't too bad, right? There's nothing
Mhm.
like that anymore, you know.
Mhm.
So anyway,
Yeah.
that's a pretty good opening ramble. But so how does it affect you now, Mike? You like you said, think of it from the point of view, like I know you said you're immune, but let's
Mhm.
play the game of you're at North Dakota State and they've got
Mhm.
I picked one that has a great football program, but
Yeah.
even though it's D2 or three, right?
Mhm.
They're usually in the title game if I remember right. But who came from that one? There's a quarterback,
Carson Wentz.
Carson Wentz. Yeah, and
Yep.
there's another one too. I can't remember more recent, I think, even than
Trey
him.
Lance.
Trey Lance. Oh my gosh. That's
Man,
right.
trivia day. Let's go.
Oh, you're on, man. You're on. I knew it too. Part of my brain was going, yeah, Trey Lance, the one we got rid of for Brock Purdy. I'm like, okay, yeah.
Yep, that's right.
Um, I'm a Niner fan. So
Yeah, there you go.
anyway, let's pretend you're there and
Mhm.
you got the same job, you're running what you do. How does it affect you if you got to worry about paying your coaches, first of all, paying your athletes, trying to get them on TV, all these different things we're already talking about. What would you do?
Um, that's a good question. I think that the way I would approach it is just take a hard look at your conference, um, the conference that you're in, where the lay of the land is with each team. Because what I've started to see is a lot of teams are starting to focus on very specific areas, like University of Florida sprints. Mike Holloway sprints, jumps. He's got hand in everything. He's got good multis in the past. Like he's going all in there. Texas, they're kind of doing the same thing. There's a lot of schools right now that are going the distance route too, because you can kind of sort of double dip in the cross country
Sure.
distance realm. So, I mean, I would look at that. And then for me, obviously, I've coached multis, ever since I've started coaching at the college level.
Right.
Multis are great. Come and do the deck. You can do some opens. If the deck doesn't work out, you've got maybe two or three events we can stick you in and score at conference. And then it's, so you're finding your lane and telling your coaches, okay, this is going to be our lane, but obviously we want to field as big of a team as we can and cover all the grounds. Um, and so then you got to play this balancing game of like, okay, we're going to invest in this pole vaulter. He's a one event kid, so we got to know he's going to contribute right away.
Yeah.
He's got to be a national qualifier,
Yeah.
and that's the one thing that I think is going to affect it the most is pole vaulters are one event people most of the time, unless they're a
Sure.
multi.
Yeah.
There's there's going to be no more rosters unless it's a specialized program that have more than two per
Specialist.
gender.
Yeah. Where you have just
Yeah.
one event per person. Yeah.
And high jump kind of falls into that. I mean, a lot of
Sure.
high jumpers are long jumpers or triple jumpers too, sometimes sprint, but yeah,
Right.
I mean, the whole adage that I remember hearing when I was coming out of high school, going into college, of like, you need to be able to be as marketable as possible, do as many events as you can. You want to bring as much value to the team. And
Mhm.
that was the case to just get scholarship money. Now it's, you got to be able to do that to stay on a team.
Right.
Um, and and mid majors are getting plucked all the time. Like even in our conference, we see kids going into the transfer portal, after 1 year, and it's like, oh
Right.
man, it's okay. Let's go find the better deal. What's the better, this? So yeah, I would start from the ground level and just establish, okay, this is going to be our lane. This is where we're going to put our focus. we're going to have people in other events to cover, but you just don't have a big enough roster to, load up different events and
Yeah.
and cover everything. You just got to be able to say, okay, what's our bread and butter? Who are we going to be able to get in? Where are we going to be able to steal points and load up events that maybe other teams aren't loading up?
Yeah.
And yeah, and then you got to go. The recruiting aspect of it is crazy. I mean, it's transfer portal hunting. It's
Sure.
spending weeks over in Europe trying to find kids or get kids to come over
Yeah.
that are basically already pro. Um,
Yeah.
and then going and finding that one-off high school kid that's ready to come in and dominate and contribute. So, um, and then it's, what's the budget, because these kids that we're getting, these high profile transfers or these high profile international kids, they want to be put on the national stage,
Sure.
not only at NCAA's but during the season.
Yeah.
So we're going down to Azusa Pacific because that's a big outdoor meet. We're going to Mount
Right.
Sac. We're going to Texas Relays.
Yeah.
And that's more and more of
Sure.
this. And,
Which I
is
love. Hey, let's get some eyes on the sport, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But if you look at it from like an administrator point and the broader scale of the school, money's coming in, money's going out for football, money's coming in, money's coming out for basketball, because that's where it all comes from. And track, it's like money's going out, but what are we
Yeah.
bringing in?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's sponsors, it's alumni, it's donors. There's a lot of extra behind the scenes work that's got to happen in order to continue to keep a successful program going.
Sure. Well, this is the thing that keeps coming into me because I've heard some of the kids talking about it, and I'm like, you're talking about NIL money, and we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about track athletes. So I'm what NIL money, and more specifically, like NIL is now commonly been stated to be a misnomer. There is no name, image, and likeness stuff going on. It's
Nope.
basically just opened up the door for payments. There's no more brown bags being handed around. It's just here's your money, show up to
Mm-hmm.
practice, do what you do, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, I'm sure there's still people taking tests for guys to keep them on campus. And I'm sure there's, like the UCLA parking scandal going on somewhere, all if people don't think that stuff's still happening, they're not paying attention, right? So
Yeah.
if you've got money, it kind of quote unquote buys you privileges, but it's like
Mm-hmm.
I keep thinking for track and field. I talked with Jeremy Fisher, and this conversation's 2 years ago on a podcast, but he was talking about the fact that the jumpers at both the say U.S. national level and then
Mm-hmm.
international world level are not being paid, even if they're competing very well. If they're coming in top 5 in the world or whatever, it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's peanuts. Javon
Yeah.
Harrison, who jumped really well in the 2021 Olympic, made it to the final, jumped 7'8",
Mm-hmm.
and still wasn't even close. I mean, it was like 8th place.
Made finals in long jump too that year.
Yes, yes, amazing, right? But they're
Yeah.
not paying those athletes. They're paying the sprinters. They're
Mm-hmm.
paying the 100, the 200, the 4x1, a little bit less of the 4x4, and they're paying all those distance runners, which just blows my mind because I'm like, and I know where that comes from because there's a heck of a lot of distance runners out there. If you want to
Yeah.
form a club, this is just a quick note to those of you that want to make some money in the summer or start up
Mm-hmm.
for any reason, start up a running club because
Yep.
you get people that join that feel guilty if they don't run. And they're going to come to you and go, how many miles do you want me to do? And I'm thinking I would run 1 mile and I'd be done. They're going to do 15 miles, or I'm going to do
Mm-hmm.
7 miles and, on 7-minute mile paces. I'm like, I can run 7-minute mile on a motorcycle, so I was like, so you've got that culture supporting that, but there's a lot of other stuff that's just getting skipped over. And some of these athletes like, Brian Krauser, repeat gold medalist. And, it's like, you can't make any money again, though. Well, even with all these names, you got to get seen on TV. I remember,
Mm-hmm.
Usain Bolt one time after all those gold medals. I remember this on a
Yep.
commercial.
That's it.
That was his move. They got the commercial, and I'm like, no speaking part. They didn't even refer to him by name, I don't think. I might have, but it's like, you know who he is. But it's like,
Mm-hmm.
man, for track and field, it's just, so I'm thinking, name, image, and likeness, what does that mean? How are they going to get money? Are the universities going to give them literally a job where they,
Mhm.
when you're not going to practice and you're not going to class, you got to go work somewhere to get money because, like you said, where's the money going to come from? Where am I going to fund this team?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the NCAA has come out with some guidelines of like you have to be able to provide them. Like if we're cutting these rosters, all these kids on the roster are going to be getting, this scholarship money, and they're treating them like employees. It's you're instead of scholarships, it's essentially contracts of, okay, we're gonna pay you this, we're gonna pay you this, you're gonna compete, you're gonna be on the team, you got to go to class, and it's everybody's a little bit different. That's kind of the tough thing is they open up these doors and it's just the wild, wild west of like, go figure
Yeah.
it out. NIL was supposed to be name, image, likeness. You're not supposed to pay for play. You're not supposed to do this. You're supposed to
Yeah.
go get your contract. Coaches aren't involved. Schools like aren't really involved. Compliance can look at it, but not really.
Yeah.
Now it's, we've got these collectives that are a part of each school and they're setting all these up for school kids. And
Right.
Nick Saban, all these big head time, like big, great coaches are leaving the sport. And because they're like, I wasn't in it for this.
Yeah.
Nick Saban's famous quote is like, I hate when their first question is, how much are you going to pay me? It's
Yeah.
like, no, 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 no. That's not how this works.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what are you giving me? What are we going to get from you? Are we going to find the success? And then based on your success is when the reward comes.
Yeah.
It's flip flop. And with track, there's New Balance, I feel like is doing a pretty good job of going out and finding kids that are at that top level and signing them to NIL contracts.
Yeah.
On is doing the same thing. And then, one of the things I hear a lot is there's schools that just get general, I guess, contracts. NIL, if you are a student athlete at this school, you get $2,500 just right out of the get go once you've signed.
Right.
Whether you're track or football or
Yeah.
lacrosse or whatever it is. But yeah, coaches are doing NIL deals. There's tampering all the time, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how does a kid go into the transfer portal day one and then the next day he's signed?
Right.
Been doing this a little, not super long, but long
Yeah.
enough to know no way a deal gets done that fast with that amount of money.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's
There
it's
needs to
just
be some
tough. Like,
guidelines. Like I was
yeah.
UCLA's team last year before this last year, which was a big improvement. The previous year,
Mhm.
they had just got rid of, Jaime Jaquez and, Tiger and all these guys leave the program
Mhm.
and like they got a kind of rebuilding year. So they bring in a bunch of players and there's like 3 or 4 guys from other countries. And there's this transfer from Utah that was from Lithuania. And there's, they bring in this 7'3" kid from Spain, Mara.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh, I love this guy. I don't even care if he can stand up. Get him under the basket, throw it to him, and see what he can do. Right? Well, he
Yeah.
barely plays him at all his freshman year. This year, of course, he blossoms. And then after he sits him on the bench at the start of the second half of the last game when they're getting their butts kicked, I'm like, why is Mara sitting on the bench? Put him in, coach. And what did he say? He goes, they're not using me. I'm out of here. And I'm just like going,
Mhm.
man, you gotta understand this, but at the same time, like you're saying, this constant. Now it's been like that in basketball, not so much in football, and
Mhm.
it's been one and done in basketball anyway. So I don't
Mhm.
think it actually changes it that much, but they can get plucked. Like you're saying, the mid majors, you got a great player like a Steph Curry back in the day.
Mhm.
He's not going to stay at Davidson. Somebody's going to come along and say, hey,
Nope.
we'll pay you $2 million to play for us
Mhm.
next year. And you can still turn pro later and get all your stuff. So it's like, I mean, Arch Manning was getting over 6, 7 figures to play, and he played backup for 2 years.
He sat on the bench.
Amazingly. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
wait a minute. If I get myself a Manning and I'm paying 7 figures, he's going to play. I don't know about anybody else, but he's going to play. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of surprised by that, but they're willing to pay and wait, and they got to the quarterfinals this year or whatever. So you're like, okay, well, or I guess the semis. I think they got to the semis.
Mhm.
But yeah, they're going to have to do something. They're going to have to
Mhm.
put some guardrails in there, like you said, or maybe they'll learn their lessons the hard way from the pros. Because I mean, I'm always mystified by these contracts. You'll hear, oh, so and so got a
Mhm.
5-year contract, but it's like, well, only this much is guaranteed, and
Mm-hmm.
football is amazing at it because in baseball and basketball, if you sign the contract, they have to pay you. They
Mm-hmm.
literally have to pay you. You could break your leg, in 25 places the next day, and they are on the hook to pay you, injury or no. In the
Yeah.
NFL, unless they guaranteed the money, they can always cut you and just go,
Mm-hmm.
good luck, have fun. It was nice having you. We don't need you anymore. If somebody else wants to get you, they can pick up the part of your contract that we're not going to pay.
Mm-hmm.
Have at it. It's amazing that way. I listen to Colin Cowherd all the time, and the
Mm-hmm.
football setup is just it's amazingly streamlined for
Mm-hmm.
product. I mean, it just makes everything simple for this. It's like, hey, if you don't perform, you're not going to get paid.
Mm-hmm.
We only guarantee so much, but it's like, if you don't perform, you're out, and then you've got the built-in impetus of everything is important. Every game.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be seen. Now you're watching Jacksonville versus some other crappy team. Yeah, that doesn't get ratings, but they set it up. They're smart enough to flex the schedule. They do what they got to do. You know,
Yeah.
oh, it's kind of crazy. But the one and done stuff, like you said, they can find a way to
Mm-hmm.
start writing these contracts. Like you said, say, hey, we're going to pay for you. First of all, it should still be to get an education.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody, and this is where it gets kind of weird, but everybody's going to realize this, and these corporations can't pay everybody the same. So they're going to be like,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to have to create, and football has its own thing. Quarterbacks make the most, left tackles and edge rushers, and there's
Mm-hmm.
running backs have been devalued. Like you get
Like
Saquon,
an unwritten pay
yeah,
scale. Yeah.
yeah, $8 million, but it's like the market only pays what it will pay. You can't come
Mm-hmm.
in there as a cornerback and say, "Oh, I want $50 million a year." They'd be like, "Well, good luck."
Yeah,
We don't
have fun. We'll go find
cornerbacks
somebody
get
else.
a quarterback, yes. A cornerback, no. So, I just don't understand what it's going to be like in track. But I saw the writing on the wall right away. You talked about, I'm like, well, this is going to put a premium on multis for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And the other end of
Yeah.
it is how are these meets going to work? They need to. I mean, the NC2A's finals are still huge, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
a big meet that's set up for it, but it's never on TV, or if it is, it's 2 weeks delayed on channel 2 or some funky channel that nobody knows how to find. So,
Or, behind a paywall like ESPN
right,
Plus or, you
right.
know.
So
Mm-hmm.
you got to really be looking, and then
Mm-hmm.
like you said, anybody that knows about track and field will say, okay, well the SEC's here this year, and there's Arkansas and there's LSU, and we're used to them, and then there's
Mm-hmm.
10 schools, and you got Florida's always a good school, and like you said, you go through your things, but it's like it needs to become better publicized, and maybe the competition with these mega corporations will bring about changes in the other direction. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it track it's interesting. Like it'll always draw track people because obviously once you get into it, you realize, how great the sport is and the athleticism and the competition and just the setup of it. But yeah, I mean, you need to do something to draw kind of the regular just Joe Schmo who doesn't know anything.
Yeah.
And I saw an interview by Michael Johnson who's put this league together, and he's
Yes.
got all these donors, and it's they just kicked it off this weekend down in Kingston, Jamaica, and they got all this prize money and everything. And he did an interview, and he's talking about like why would Noah Lyles want to go race Tyreek Hill? He's like, that's not a race. He's not a sprinter. Like Noah Lyles will wipe the floor with him. It's all entertainment. It's all this and this. It's not pure sport. It's not. It's like you're missing the point. Like
Yeah.
you want that entertainment. You want those
Yes.
eyes coming. You want those basic people coming in. That's why the Olympics are so great. That's why everybody gets into it so
Yeah.
much for that 4 years because they're like, oh, like this is kind of crazy. Like
Yeah.
this guy's just running, whatever. And then even if the layman people are like, oh yeah, I can run that fast, gets them in the sport, opens the
Yeah.
door.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I feel like track enthusiasts, like the real blue bloods of track, shoot themselves in the foot a little bit because
A lot.
they have this. I don't know. I think it's a little bit of just like this like protective ego of like, oh, track has always been second fiddle. We're always this little brother to football, basketball. So we don't want to, whatever. You guys go do your thing. We know we're the real athletes.
Right.
It's
Right.
like
Yeah.
you got to play ball. Like you want
Yes.
to. if it's the NFL, if it's one guy that's like, oh, I can run faster than Noah Lyles, put it on the line. Like,
Really?
televise it,
Hmm.
do it. It's not going to be Tyson and Logan Paul, and even that drew millions and millions of
Unbelievable. Yeah.
dollars. And
Unbelievable
it's
amount.
so you got to learn how to market it and you got to learn how to
Mhm.
do it. I like how track it's at least at the the Diamond League and some of these other European, they're doing like high jump specific events, and
Yes.
or they're doing pole vault
Pole vault.
specific, or Ryan Krauser's doing his throw series now, and
Good. Good for him.
we're yeah, it's you get it's formatted. Track is formatted in a weird way where it's not going to be this fast pace, but
Right.
you get enough people interested, and you talk about the athleticism and you talk about all these other things. And yeah, I was going to play football, but
Mhm.
this just drew, this you can get people into it. It
Yeah.
just takes the right approach and the right way to do it. And
Needs to be produced so much better.
mhm,
If you're going to do the big meet with all the shows, that's a huge problem because that's been going on for,
mhm,
I've done
yeah,
over this and over this on the podcast, but it's like from when they first filmed one of our meets as I was a senior at UCLA in 1986, Prime Ticket Network says we're going to film the UCLA Cal meet and we're going to show it. And
mhm,
we just went nuts. We're like, we're going to be on TV. Oh, this is,
mhm,
and they put out their cameras on, they got them on the corners and we're all doing
mhm.
the thing and we compete and Cal comes down here and brings their rain with them and we beat them. Me, Mike Powell, yes, Mike Powell and the world record holder long jumper, but also a 7-1 high jumper in high school. Me and Mike Powell and my good buddy Brian Mergenthal, we swept their high jumpers. And so we're sitting down and we're gonna watch this telecast. We're so
Yeah,
stoked. How many of my jumps do you think I saw? Zero.
zero guaranteed.
Zero.
Yep.
Not only did I win and I beat Mike Powell, which only happened a few times because he didn't usually
Yeah.
come over and do the high jump, but there was a big event and we said we need the
Mhm.
points. And he never practiced, by the way. It wasn't like I was beating him at his prime. He just would come over and do it because he was so
Yeah.
athletic. He had like a 48-inch vertical. Mike, if you are listening, love you. But he was an amazing, amazing athlete. But he didn't practice. He'd come over and go, "Is that your mark?" Yeah. He'd run from that, shuffle his feet, and boom. So anyway, we're watching and nothing. And it wasn't just a high jump. No high jump,
Mm,
no shot put, no this, no that. If you were lucky, they might have shown the results in a graphic. But
mm,
oh boy, did you see every lap of the 10,000? And did you see, every lap of the steeplechase and everything else, that those cameras picked up? And I'm just like, but that hasn't changed. It really
no,
has not changed. You
not
might
at all.
have a little montage of an event, or
Or
maybe if
you
you're
catch
lucky,
it
they'll
as
check in
the
along the
lap
way.
camera goes around.
Yeah. Or they'll come in and out. They'll come back and say,
Mm,
"Okay, we're back here," and that's almost to me better. If I could just get you to check in every once in a while, that would be better.
mhm.
Here's the highlights. But
Yeah.
they did the same thing in 1984. I remember looking back at the Olympic coverage of that. I saw one Dwight Stones jump, one jump out of Doug Nordquist, which was
Mm,
cool because Doug came in fifth, and then one jump showing, I think, Mogenberg winning. And that was it. If you had to be, really paying attention on some other level, or maybe you went there and
mm,
saw it. I mean, it was like, and now we've got the internet, we got this, we got that, we got all these cameras, but still, they have no idea. I love this.
mm,
You're talking about the promotion of, I saw Barshim do it back in the day, just
yeah.
back, and you see them closing off the whole stadium, right? They got just the end,
Mhm,
they got people crowded around. That's awesome because it's not just a full stadium. And you, I
mhm.
don't know, every time who goes and watches the high jump? Friends and relatives, you know, and then whoever else happened to buy a ticket down there, and they're kind of
Yeah.
stuck on the end of the stadium, going, "Oh, look at that! What are these guys doing, honey? They're running up and jumping over stuff. Oh, cool." So you've got people that know, and then people that don't know. But it's like if
Mhm.
you hold that only event, now you're not distracted by all the races,
Yeah.
the three-ring circus that is a great track and field meet. Because, there really is a
Yeah.
ton of things happening.
Mhm,
You need like those NFL camera trucks that have like 20 different sets of cameras and one guy back there with the mic, right, hooked up to the guys on the TV going, "Okay, go to camera one. We're going to watch, Mike Powell in, the senior masters long jump. He's up.
mhm.
And all right, we got it. Okay, run it." And then you come back, you say, "Okay, then you start the 100." And they're just like this.
Yeah.
Or you get your one event and put all your
Mhm,
focus there. I've been thinking about doing that out here. I wanted to try to do a indoor meet and have it just be on a really nice basketball floor and have everybody
Hmm.
just jump in high tops and put the kids, you know,
Yeah.
and just have fun with it. Have a good
Hmm.
squeaky floor that everybody had really great shoes. And you're just like, let's just do what everybody wishes they could do when they're playing basketball. Because if you can
Yeah.
jump up and tomahawk reverse spin, you probably can jump pretty well indoors, you know. So I'm like,
Hmm.
that's coming if I can find a place. I just don't
Yeah.
know how to get it marketed. But anyway, there's that.
Yeah.
So, oh, let's talk about this. Okay, we're
Okay.
ranting and raving.
Yeah.
What do you think? Now, this is another thing I think is great. The controversy that came up because I heard, and I haven't vetted it yet, but I keep hearing over and over that they have changed the rules in the men's high jump, and you can now take off on 2 feet. And when I was jumping, I remember them saying it's against the rules to jump off two, basically because, and I've watched videos like this on, viral videos on Instagram stuff, but if
Hmm.
you're a gymnast and you can do a tumbling run and then start doing back handsprings and jump straight back up and over like a double or triple back, there are
Hmm.
gymnasts that could probably jump over 8, 10 feet in the air.
Yeah.
And they've said that's out. We don't want that kind of a high jump. It's amazing, you know,
Hmm.
but most of the regular high jumpers wouldn't even be competitive. So they've said we can't do that.
Right.
Now, I don't know what the limits on the rule are because I've seen a proliferation of guys on Instagram. The one kid jumped 7.2. I don't know if you saw the video last week. He
Yep.
just
I did.
nice, beautiful layout off of 2 feet. And the first, I
Hmm.
might have been the first person to ask. I literally put in the comments. I said, "Dude, nice jump." I said, "What's your best jump off one leg?" And he said 6'8". And I'm like, that's been my experience. I've had people that do great backovers and they get in a beautiful position. And I always explain to kids, I go, that's wonderful, but you're never in that, you never push with both legs. One leg goes
Yeah.
up, the other leg goes down, and you got to get back to that position, which takes a little bit of crafting. So it's like
Hmm.
this would open up. Now, if you say they've got to run in and then jump head first, but even on a double back, you could do that. So I don't know, how you're going to keep it
Yeah.
in the show. But if at the same time, here we are, there's controversy and there's
Hmm.
people talking. And to me, that's like, hey, we got a spotlight. That's cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's I feel like we always had conversations like this of like, the other thing that they started doing and they trial runned it is instead of the board for long jump, it's the zone. You
I
just
like
got to
it.
hit in the zone and then they
Different.
mark from where your foot. I
Yeah.
mean, and there was that big whole thing and everybody took a side and it was no, this is going to be innovative. We're going to, this and this and everybody else was like, "No, you're taking away from the nature of the event. Like it requires precision. It
Yes.
requires that you have a consistent step and you have good rhythm and all these things." And
Mhm.
high jump, it's kind of the same. Like you know, it. I don't really necessarily have an opinion about it yet because I haven't. I've seen it on Instagram and I've heard that there's rumblings of that changing.
Right.
Um, but I haven't heard anything like, oh, officially we're going to start talking about it. But
Mhm.
I mean, all sports innovate and all sports come up with different things to push their game or their event
Yeah.
or their sport forward. Um, maybe this is where my you know old school track elitist opinion comes from of like we've been doing it this way for how long now
Right.
and
Right.
we're gonna just flip and start adding this new thing.
Yeah.
Um, but again, it's the NFL does it all the time with their
Yeah.
rules and how you can tackle and how you can do this and
Yeah.
this and their kickoff, which was the same for forever, and
Right.
now it's way different. Um, so I mean, I don't know. I don't know necessarily how I feel about it as long as I can find kids to coach it.
Right. Right.
um,
Yeah.
but
Maybe it
yeah,
opens things up. I don't know.
it's interesting. The other one that is just, pole vaulting a lot, the one that we always talked about was like, hey, why are we jumping over a bar? Why don't we have like a sensor or laser system where it's like, who can get the highest hip height off the bar?
Hmm.
Mondo, it's guaranteed hip height already over 21.
Right.
So, and it's it's just things like that you know you're on the bus for 6 hours driving to a track meet and you just got stuff to talk about and you're like, hey,
Yeah.
what about this? And now some of those
Yeah.
things are coming out. So yeah, I don't know. I think, you know, from my PR background in college, good press or press is good press no matter
Hate
what.
press.
And
Yeah.
if it's
Negative
something
press.
controversial,
Yep.
hey, you know, I think I could do that. Like I'm a basketball kid. I think I could go jump off 2 feet and
Mhm.
do that and bring more kids over.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Some athletes can do both.
Yeah.
Jordan could dunk off one or two, and I know there's a lot that can do. I mean, I could do it off two. I was way better off one, but I could dunk off two
Hmm.
back in the day. And so, yeah, who knows? I find it, like you said, it's a good kind of a good problem, to
Hmm.
have. And then the other thing that popped into my head as we're talking about this is that you're saying like traditionalists, and how do we get, what is the goal? If it's just entertainment, you know, everybody wants to know who won. Well, won what? Well, we win the national championship. Well, how do you do that? Like, I bet you could ask tons of people and they might not know. It's like, well, okay,
Yeah.
sometimes they'll break it down for you. Say, look, if you finish in the top eight, you're going to go 10 or 20, 18, and you score for your team, these points, blah, blah, blah. Well, what
Hmm.
I've noticed is going away as an art form is the dual meets. Dual meets are disappearing. There used to actually be way back in the day, USA versus USSR, you know,
Hmm.
where you would try out for the national team and then go compete, and I kind of missed that. I grew up on, dual meets, and
Hmm.
I mentioned the Cal dual meet when they came down. Some of my fondest memories, going to Oregon, where
Hmm.
we went to Oregon my first 3 years, and the first two times they had duck weather and killed us. And the last time we brought our weather with us and we killed them. And I don't know if they ever invited us back, but we
Yeah.
went to Tracktown Pizza. We went to these different places. And, I just remember the dual meets were very compelling. Up there,
Hmm.
that was very audience dependent. Down here, you,
Yeah.
you get Oregon to come down and see us and you get 200 people in the stands. It's
Yeah.
not like it was. I had old
No.
videos of us going against USC in Drake Stadium, and the stands were packed. And this is like in the mid to late 70s. And there's 10 deep on the IM fence trying to look in from out there. And, here's this dual meet, us against SC. Well, my
Yeah.
senior year, we beat the crap out of SC all 4 years. And it's friends and family only in the stands,
Mhm.
400 people tops, probably less, so you're like, what's happened to all that? So
Yeah.
it's, but up in Oregon,
Well,
and we had a captive audience. Those people are crazy for track and field. That's what made it so
yeah.
great.
Yeah. Well, if you ever get the chance, speaking of dual meets, we
Army Navy.
are, yeah, Army Navy. I've been to a lot of track meets in my life as an athlete and as a coach. There is no meet, NCAA or anything, that compares to the competitiveness, intensity, and just
Mhm.
like sure will to like compete and win than this meet. It's
Right.
unreal.
Yeah.
Like we were down at Annapolis. We had our outdoor meet. They score it international like a dual meet. So it's 5-4-3 or 5-3-2-1. Um, and the way they do it is two people from each school score, no matter what.
Okay.
Only three people from each school can compete in the event. So when I go with my high jumpers, I take three. That's all I can roster. And then let's say we go 1, 2, 3. My third person doesn't score. The first Navy person and the second Navy
Right.
person score.
Okay.
So it's built to be very close. Like
Hmm.
it makes it very competitive, and each event matters.
Right.
Um, and I've been to, this is my third one or fourth one, man, fourth one. One indoor, one outdoor, 2 seasons, and every meet, it's just
Nip
even
and
as a
tuck going.
coach, it gets, yeah, it's intense. It's like it even gets chippy. Like
Sure.
that's the crazy.
Absolutely.
Like
Yeah.
it's awesome, and there's already this built-in rivalry with Army Navy as well, and it's just it's one of the most incredible track meets I've ever been to because the athletes just absolutely love it. They get
Yeah.
up for it. Like, and yeah, the dual meet is just like going away. And
Mhm.
that's one of the things that I sell the people I talk to on is like, do you want to be able to go to a track meet that like means something in the middle of the season as opposed to just fighting for conference and
Right.
NCAA? Like
And qualifying marks.
they, yeah, if we win, they get a star on their jacket, like all
Yeah.
this great stuff, and it's a big deal at both campuses. I mean,
Right.
Navy's kind of kicked our trash for the last little while, but
Yeah.
it's just this really cool environment, and the it brings out the best in our kids. Like you look at the results from just this one meet, like we have national marks that like come off of this meet, and it's
Yeah.
a dual meet.
Yeah.
There's only 6 people competing, and we have the number one hammer thrower in the country on our team right now, and she just popped off one
Yeah.
against Navy, and we've got a kid that threw shot, and he's like top 20 in the country now, and we've
Yeah.
got sprinters on the Navy team that are, great in the 400
Mhm.
hurdles. And it's just everybody shows up to that meet. And,
Yeah.
there's officers and alumni and,
Oh yeah.
generals and all these people that show up to this meet. And it's just got this buzz that when you show up, and
Absolutely.
it's super fun to coach. It's super fun to put my athletes in that position, and they do great things. But yeah, the dual meet, I think more schools need to get into that, and I think the U.S. should
Yeah.
do more of that. Like,
Yeah.
go dual Great Britain. Like, you can call
Yeah.
it the Revolutionary Duel or something like
Yeah.
that. Like,
Yeah.
you could put stuff out like that all the time, and you could do it fields, you could do sprints, like you can do a
Yeah.
lot of different things. You just got to be creative and be able to make it work, because we all have national teams, we all have club teams, we all have
Right.
whatever. And you can do it at the U20 level. You can do it at,
Absolutely.
you
Yeah.
know,
That's a
you
different
can
level.
build the whole team. You can have this age, the U23, U20, like take everybody. And it's just this big duel. Like you have multiple heats, multiple
Yeah.
flights. So,
I love it.
yeah, I mean,
I would like
I
to
think,
keep the dual meet alive and even
hmm
go down into the grassroots, go down to the
hmm
kids, because
yeah.
they don't really understand dual meets until they get into high school. All those meets are just you show up and you're basically trying to get qualifying marks for whatever
hmm
meet they've got, and then if there's a way to get ready for the JOs,
hmm
where do they start the unders at? Is it 14 or 12 or where? How low do they go?
I'm not 100% sure. I'm sure it's getting lower and lower every
Yeah,
year, but
I think
um,
I've seen 14. I think I've seen it under
yeah, I
14.
think 14 is, I think, the lowest I've seen. But
Yeah, yeah. That I mean, I love the whole idea just because, a way to normalize, across the board and to make because then, I was thinking about this the other day too. Like if I was gonna, let's put on our sports czar hat, like
yep.
putting, the Bill Simmons, but he's like, he every once in a while he'll say something like, I'm gonna put on my sports conspiracy. I'm gonna be here's are you ready to like, yeah, hit me with it. So he goes, here's my theory on why they traded, Luca. And so it's that kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna put on my sports czar hat for how do we fix track and field? And just go, well, how do we do that, man? Like, can we do the duels? And then, like you said, there's got to be a way to get everybody to compete. And I was thinking the same thing at the high school level. It's really difficult because we're such a big
hmm
country. We need a national champion at the high school.
hmm
That to me seems to be something that should be in the works already. Just go, hey, because certain states are better than others. You go to some states and you go, oh, you were state champ, you jumped 6'6". I'm like, well, here in California, that was 12th place at CIF.
Yeah, didn't even make.
Yeah. So like
Yeah.
but we're a huge state. So and we get great weather to train in. So, you got all your arguments. It doesn't matter, but it's like, hey, how do we normalize and get everybody there?
Well,
It's like NC2As.
I mean, there are national championship meets for high school. There's Nike, there's
Yeah,
New
they're doing it
Balance,
now.
there's
Yep.
Adidas, there's Junior Olympics. Like,
Agreed.
it's just it's they had the right idea, but it's turning into a money grab. It's
Of
just
course.
like AAU basketball. Like,
Well, we're just
it's all
cannibalizing
about,
ourselves. Yeah.
yeah, just cannibalizing the sport, making it more difficult for kids to, like,
Yeah.
um it's tough. Like each state, like Texas and California, there's like multiple rounds that you have to get through. to
Yes.
get to that state level. And the state level is you can be the smallest school from the middle of nowhere. If you've got the mark and you've made the meet, you are one of the best in the state. Where there's other states, not to throw Utah under the bus, but Utah, they've got a 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A, 5A, 6A. They don't compete against the 1A and the 6A. You only compete against 6A. So 6A
Yeah.
has some of the best athletes. And then 1A, it's like, oh, I won the state championship in, vault. Okay, what'd you jump? 13. 13
Yeah.
didn't even make the meet for 6A. Like,
Yeah.
so there just needs to be, it's everybody's kind of been left to themselves to kind of figure out, what's what. And not to, rag on any kid that's feeling great about, PRing and jumping and beating his
Right.
competition in the
Right.
situation that he's in. Like,
Sure.
that's great. But, state championship in California, in Texas, and in Florida weighs
Yeah.
a little bit more when you
Yeah.
have to go through so many levels and beat
Absolutely.
good competition.
Yeah, I have seen that on the site when I ask kids, sometimes say, "Hey, what'd you jump in high school? How'd you do at state?" I've
Hmm.
seen that breakdown from different states where you're like, "Oh yeah," and Florida,
Hmm.
I think has many different levels like that. My friend
Hmm.
Ryan Morgenthau coaches there, and they've got yeah, so it's everything's different. Like you said, in California, you get to the top level, and it's pretty crazy. I remember
Hmm.
my senior year, I got to the state just once. I had, jumped 6'10 3/4" to do it. And I get there and the guy that had won the state championship for 2 years running was Maurice Crumbie. And he had
Hmm.
jumped 7'5" in high school and was in his third year going to state. And I mean, he was awesome. He went and jumped at the University of Arizona. Every time I jumped against that guy, I got my ass kicked really badly. So I was like, well, Maurice Crumbie is pretty awesome, And then there were guys up north that we never saw. The only reason I knew who
Hmm.
Crumbie was they had the Sunkist meet when I was a senior in high
Hmm.
school, 1982, and it was an indoor thing. And that's by the way, the first of my three ventures indoors, and I'm retiring from indoor. I did jump earlier this year on that, the
Yeah, I
SATF.
saw.
Man, I hated so much about it. I can't even tell you. The USATF and I do not see head. I mean, I'm telling you, I ran into these refs that were just giving me a nightmare problems. I'm like, you guys stuck us over here in a corner. There's nobody watching. I'm trying to warm up. I'm 61 years old, and you're not letting me warm up properly. You're just annoying the heck out of me right now. But
Mm.
that indoor meet was where I got to see Crumbie. I had broken my
Mm.
hand playing football. I wasn't in any kind of shape. And my run was 20 feet wide, and they said, no, we have 12 feet here. And then there's a drop off 6 feet to concrete. So it was like it wasn't going to get any wider. And so I'm trying to run
Mm.
this crunch down. I didn't have the experience to deal with that, and I know how I
Hmm.
hated it. But I saw Crumbie jump 7 feet, and I'm like, oh gosh. And then who'd we bump into up from else up north? John Morris, who jumped at Cal, it was like 7'7" jumper. So there's always people coming out of the woodwork at state.
Hmm.
For me, it was out of the woodwork. For them, they were great jumpers and they knew who they were. But
Yeah.
it's such a big state. We just jumped against in the Southland down here. It was CIF, southern section. Then there's San
Hmm.
Diego, even farther down south than us. And then the city used to be city back in the day, which was like Carson and Banning and Crenshaw and all these greent teams, which now
Hmm.
I don't even hear their names anymore. I don't know what's going on with that, but that was just the lower half of the state. When we went up to
Hmm.
state, there's a whole nother half of the state that would come to state, and you'd never know who they were and maybe if they came to Arcadia, you might have known. But yeah,
Yeah.
huge
It's
state.
and it's funny you bring up Arcadia because that meet this year is I feel like the entire western side of the United States is going to that meet.
Good.
It's
Yeah, they're
it's
doing a
turned
good
into
job.
this massive, massive thing, and I think that's part of it too. Is there's all these big meets and invitationals and everything, and indoors getting bigger and bigger at the high school level, and then outdoor. I think kids and parents and teams are willing to travel and go to these bigger meets because they want to see, what that national competition looks like, and they want to give their kids that chance to really compete at a high level in the high school, which is great. I think
Yeah.
you should be able to do stuff like that, which is awesome. It's just there's disconnects all the way through that I feel like hamper like what this sport could really turn into.
Yeah.
Um, And it's yeah, I think being in it, you you get kind of caught up in the whole thing, but you
Right.
take a step back and just realize like, yeah, this could be something. We just gotta. There's too many chefs in the kitchen. I think there's too
Yes.
many people trying to run the show, and we just need
Yeah.
to come together and put something together and create kind of a pipeline.
I think
Um,
the vultures always start picking at it before it's done too. That's the thing
mm,
I noticed at the top, like you're saying, these, from vendors at these meets to whatever.
mm-hmm,
You were saying that, and I remember almost as it was out of my mouth. I'm like, yeah, they do have the national things. They do have the Nike,
mm-hmm,
New Balance, and those are good. They're like an attempt to go along, that road, which is
mm-hmm,
it's better than nothing, obviously. But yeah, I can
yeah.
see a lot of room for improvement. And then
Mhm.
I don't know, like it would be nice to have, the idea guys like you and me, and then that's some financial backing, right? Where you say, okay,
Mhm,
let's literally sit down and come up with a plan, because the thing that this is, if anybody's ever seen me work out there, and I don't know if anybody has or not, I post my stuff, but
mhm.
I have always been the guy that's going to get in trouble, okay? Because I can't sit in the stands. I can't. So when I get to the meet, I'm going to try to get down on the field. Now they may say you cannot go on the field. And sometimes I listen and sometimes I don't. I'll still end up down there somehow, because you don't watch every,
Yep.
and you end up going down there. You just pretend you know what you're doing, and you walk right
Yeah.
through somebody, and there you are, So then you get down there, and what am I going to do? I video you. I got one of the
Mhm,
best things that I ever did in high school, and shout out to my buddy Dave Wicker, who was a year in front of me, and his dad bought an RCA camcorder when he was a senior and I was a junior in 1981, and videoed all our meets on those crappy old, VCR tapes with the grainy, playback in
mhm,
slow motion. But I learned a lot about biomechanics that was completely untaught. We just watched video, and I think I learned some things even then that still translate now. So I'm a big believer in video. They had great
mhm,
stuff when I was at UCLA. They filmed us in black and white, 8 millimeter, tick, 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 like those old football films, but
mhm,
they crystal clear, and you could see stuff. You could stop it on a dime and go, wow, look at that position. So I have always loved that. And I cannot help but give that feedback to my athletes.
yeah.
And so it used to be, oh no, no, you can't do that. You
Mhm,
can't do it. And as the meets got bigger, they let that go less and less. But then all of a
mhm,
sudden, at the CIF level, just a few years back, I was first time ever I had a pole vaulter. And I went to this school and they said, yeah, I saw it was at a league finals one year, and I go, you guys are holding the pole vault here? I go, I didn't see pole vaulter here. I said, well, we're holding the event for anybody that has a pole vaulter because we don't usually do it. But if there's a couple of them, we let them compete and the winner gets to go to CIF. I'm like, and
mhm,
they go, I go, why haven't we done it here at Irvine High School? And my friend Brenton Youngren, shout out to Brenton if you're listening, he goes, well, we don't have anybody who can coach it. And I go, I pole vaulted in high school. I'll gladly
mhm.
coach, you know. Now I hadn't done it in 20 years, so or 30 yet, but I immediately started going to Anthony Kern's,
Mm,
clinics and asking a ton of
yep.
questions, and that was, a good start. And so, we went from there, but it's like I go to CIF because the guy that I was coaching managed to win, and then
Mm,
we go to CIF prelims, and I'll never forget, it's at Estancia High School, and they had their own little area. This was just like
mm,
Barshim and all that. The pole vaulters, if you don't watch them at these meets, they are a completely different community. Like
mhm,
they fight together, they band together. There's no,
yep.
I would say countries around the world should study this because they all are speaking the same language and they're all rooting for each other. They all help each other. Like
Mhm,
somebody breaks a pole. I remember Chan, the guy that I was working with, who again, we learned together basically by going to Kern's clinics. But we were, whatever I got out of Kern, then he and I would try to back it up in practice. And he PR'd 5 times in that meet. And he literally went from dead last and PR'd 5 times. He ended up jumping like 13.6 or something. And then
mhm,
next height would have made it to CIF finals,
mm,
which, was like the top. They took the top 9, I think, out of 36. So anyway, we're going there and we ran out of pole. He basically was
mm,
going through all his poles. And I'm like, God, you know what? We need another pole. And my understanding of how to move up from one pole to the next and how much you back and all that is very marginal. but you listen and you listen, and I said, yeah, I think we need another pole. And I'm like, we don't have anything. And this guy overheard me, this one guy, and he goes, hey, what do you need? You need a 14.6 and this weight. And you think, yeah, you got one of those? He's like, yeah, here you go. And
Hmm.
it's that, when does that happen? I was like, mind blown by that. Okay, that's part of the mindset. Then the refs were great. They were anytime somebody PR'd, they'd be like, oh yeah, that guy, that's a seasonal PR or that's a personal best, and everybody would cheer. And this could be a guy that came in like 25th. It didn't matter.
Hmm.
And they're
Yeah.
all about it. And then even better, I see coaches looking at stuff on their phone, talking right to the athlete, going like this. And so I very casually walked up to the guy running it, and I said, "Excuse me, sir." I said, "Are the coaches and the athletes allowed to look at video?" And he looked at me like I was insane. And he goes, "Of course." He goes, "Absolutely." He goes, "Just try to stay out of everybody's way." And I'm like, "This is great." I don't have any constraints on me at all.
Yeah.
Not only were the coaches right there at
Hmm.
CIF prelims, right down on the field. And it's been like that at every one I've ever seen. All these big
Hmm.
meets, football guys are get to be out there. So I'm just like,
Hmm.
okay, we can't have exclusionist rules. I need to be down there with my high jumpers.
Hmm.
And Aiden Garnett and Jack Weissman, my two guys back in 2019 and before the pandemic,
Hmm.
I got there and they both go, "Do you want to come down on the field? We've got coaches pass." I'm like,
Hmm.
"I can come down on the field?" And they're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Of course." So I go down
Hmm.
the field. I ask the ref, same thing. I go, "Can I video the athletes? Because I don't want to get them in trouble. It's a huge meet.
Yeah, of
I'm
course.
going to
Yeah.
rein in myself a little bit." But I said, "I video." And they go, "Yes, just do not be in the way." So I went and stood in some places. I go, "Can I be here? Like way back here?" They're like, "Yeah." And then I said, "Where can we watch?" And he said, "Okay, now here, you can't watch here. You got to go over here behind the
Yep.
football thing and get
That's
out
right.
on the field." And I'm like, "Okay, just as long as I know the rules and I'm good, right?" They go, "Yeah." So we got to
Hmm.
watch videos, all that stuff. Now at the state meet, of course, they would have to walk all the way over to the side.
Hmm.
And, oh, you can't come across the tracks or you're yelling at them. I'm just like, this is the most stupid thing. Because I played football. So in football, you got your head coach, you got offensive
Hmm.
defensive coordinators, and you have everybody has their own position coach, and you've got this and you've got that, and you've got feedback all the time. Like you watch those pro
Hmm.
guys, first series of the
Yeah.
game, they go 3 and out. What do? They come over, they're on their iPads, and
Pick up the iPad. Yep.
they can see the defense, they can see what they did, and they go, okay, we're going to make this adjustment, blah blah blah. I mean, it's intensely coached on so many
Hmm.
levels. I'm like, you guys are missing the boat here. First of all, you need to get cameras on us so they can see all this great work we're doing as coaches. And then second, they need to see the drama of the adjustments being made. Get a coach mic'd up. I should be mic'd up. I would be like going, dude, what is my number one pet peeve? You're too close to the bar. Pull back. Get
Yeah.
yourself some room to operate. The bar went up on you and you forgot, right? Yeah, yeah. Okay. Now don't forget to cycle your feet, whatever it is. But they're
Hmm.
missing all of that, and it's like, don't we really want the kids to perform at their best? Why are you going to hamstring them? Tennis finally got the message. You couldn't
Hmm.
coach your athletes during the match at tennis. Of course, what are
Hmm.
they all up in the box doing? They're like, go to the net or start
Hmm.
do his backhand or what, and they'd catch them and it would be this big scandal. Now they're just like, talk to them on the,
Whatever.
yeah, when you're changing sides and you're sitting down for a
Yeah.
minute and the TV's
Hmm.
on somewhere else, just go ahead and talk to them. It's like, fine, thank you. That
Yeah.
makes sense. We're talking about millions of dollars here. You should be able to be coached.
Yeah.
So, oh my God.
Yeah, it's that was something that changed from when I was in college until I started coaching. Like in college, the coaches could film, but you couldn't watch it mid competition.
Right.
And now it's every meet I go to, okay, where's the coach's box?
Mhm.
Oh, you can film it here, but you got to go back there so you're not in the way of other coaches filming. And
Right.
I it just with how technical and with how important things are in high jump and vault, like you got to be able to make those adjustments. And
Yeah.
that you can always make the it's for safety argument, like that usually
Agreed.
works with vault.
It should work with a high
um,
jump. I had a kid hit his head
yeah,
on the standard just the other day that I was
I had my
three
multi
times
do it
working.
twice this year.
Yeah.
So
Like,
Yeah,
dude,
in practice, luckily.
get get your plant step has got to be past the standard.
Get away. Yeah.
Unless you're Barshim and you want to take off 7 feet out and 3 feet to the left, which I
Yep, that's right.
still can't figure out, but
It's
yeah, it's
yeah.
amazing.
So I mean it's but interestingly enough, I this last summer I got to go out to Kansas State and kind of shadow Cliff Revelto,
Hmm.
who great high jump coach, coach for Eric Kennard, Olympic gold medalist now,
Yeah,
and lots of national champions. And he absolutely hates film at
really.
meets. Absolutely hates it. He's like, and his reasoning is sound. I think it's a little bit of a, he's retired now. Cliff, you're great. You're amazing. The goat of high jump coach.
Right.
I think it's an older coach mentality of like, but I agree with him. The fact that like sometimes I just want my athletes to be able to feel what they're
Sure.
doing.
Hmm.
And I do the same thing at practices. Like there's some practices that I don't film
Hmm.
because I want them to be able to feel, okay, what does it actually feel like to put pressure in your curve? What, as opposed to just seeing it in film. Like we can go back and look and I'll show you, you're not putting pressure through your feet in your curve because you're getting
Right.
sucked in. But I want them to be able to feel what that's like and what does it feel like to jump further away from the bar. And I always my first inclination that I go to is like, okay, what do you think? Tell me what you feel. Tell me what you think about this before
Hmm.
we confirm it on the iPad. Like, yep, you're too close. Yep, you're taking off and diving into the pit too early. Just because I think it for me, I didn't have a coach the end of my high school career with vault,
Hmm.
and when I got into my freshman year of college, I didn't have a pole vault coach, which was just me and my teammates. And I think my mentality that I had then as an athlete of like, I just got to figure this out is
Right.
kind of the same as a coach. And yes, my athletes do get frustrated sometimes. I know they do
Sure.
when I'm trying to just give them pieces at a time as opposed to, coach, just show me, just let me see. But I think the learning curve is steeper, but the overall success that I've found with my athletes is better
Mm.
because now they come off the pit, they come over. The first conversation is, hey, let me see the film. It's, oh, coach, I know I was too close.
Right.
And it's like you're building those instincts. And to Cliff's point again, him being at the Olympics and, world championships and everything, you know, coaches aren't allowed down on the field for the Olympics and aren't
Mhm.
allowed down on the field for world championships. You're yelling and screaming from the stands, and you got to be able to know an athlete can make those adjustments on their own, even if they just see like a hand signal or do this and move back. And
Right.
it's an interesting combination. But yeah, I mean, it's everybody's filming now. I feel like I'm trying to prevent my athletes from relying on that film,
Right.
but at the same time, you see, it's there's definitely benefits to it, and I'm a big film guy as well. Like I love watching film, breaking down film.
Hmm.
Any recruits that I talk to, that's one of the first things that I want to see because
Sure.
visually for me, it's like I can pick out the things that you need to be doing as opposed to like you trying to, you
Yeah.
know, break it down for me. So I see both sides to it, and I try and do both.
Yeah.
But sometimes as a coach, it's hard to film and watch at the same time.
Oh, agreed. Agreed. When I film, I just pick my favorite angles and I'm watching.
Hmm.
Sometimes I can see what they did and I don't. That's why I turn into the immediate film guy because the hardest thing is number one, and this is for coaches and athletes out there if you're listening,
Hmm.
you know, and again, here we are on Raise the Bar, and I'm talking with Mike Ashton, Army track and field multis and jumps coach, right? You still doing all those, wearing all those
Yeah,
hats?
multis and vertical jumps.
And vertical jump, so pole vault and high jump, and
Hmm.
lots of experience. You were at Utah Valley before that, right?
Hmm.
And then
Yep, that's correct.
I've only been high school and a little bit of D2 now, but years and years of doing the same things, and
Hmm.
um, I find when I'm watching the video, like you said, I've had days like that where I'm just like, you know what, I'm tired of trying to video everything. I'm just going to watch, and there
Hmm.
are times when that is quicker, where it's like, because
Hmm.
there are times and they've gotten used to me seeing the video, and lots of times they want to see the video, and it does become problematic if I have a big clinic. So
Yep.
remember to, I'd like to get stuff set up. Like I keep talking about my dream setup. My dream
Yeah.
setup would
I
be
remember.
those cameras on that 5-degree angle. But I've been
Mhm.
experimenting with angles now too, because I watched who was it? Anika McPherson, the
Mhm.
little, she's 5'4", I think, and she's 37 or 39, so I think she retired. But back in the day, which was back in the 2000s somewhere, she jumped 2 meters. She jumped 2 meters, and she's 5'4". She jumped six,
Wow.
6 3/4. And I'm telling you, her run was maybe 3 feet to the right of the standard. And she ran in a straight line and made a very tiny turn and just
Hmm.
leaned back. And her foot plant angle, I'm not kidding, was not a 45. It was a 60. It's almost
Wow.
looking at it like a hurdle. And she still gets the knee across and goes up and just gets great rotation and height and everything else. And I was watching that and I'm just like, wow, this is changing my perception about a
Hmm.
lot of things. I'm like,
Hmm.
I realize you can get a great lean left angle when you're running straight at the bar. Because if you're running
Hmm.
straight at the bar, I'm filming you from the side, you could be leaning straight back with no tilt to the left or the right. You're running a straight line. But to me, looking at you, it looks like you're leaning to your left, even though you're actually just leaning back. So
Hmm.
I started to learn a little bit about that foot plant angle. And I used to be a proponent of parallel because I was raised on parallel.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I was going, why do I always feel like I'm blowing through my plant? And it's like, well, when you put your feet together, if you're leaning straight back and your feet are parallel, you can't be leaning very far to your left. I mean, you can, but the
Hmm.
longer you come down the bar in a straight line, you're going to lose a lot of that, right? And that's why
Hmm.
people travel down the bar. So
Yep.
anyway, I still like those angles, but I still like now I've been looking at sometimes I'll stand in the back corner and shoot at.
Hmm.
I want you to run at me, here. And then I've started doubling down on teaching them about how they're leaning back based on where they're being shot from. So it's like
Hmm.
I standing straight behind you and watching you run away from me. I usually use that just to make sure that they're running at their turn mark because I'll pick something.
Hmm.
Say, I want you to run at your turn mark. I said, if all of a sudden you're running and you go outside of your turn mark and I can see it, I go, you're not
Hmm.
running straight at it. That's a simple thing. So I'm
Yep.
like, you need to block my view of your turn mark until you drop into your turn, or else we need to
Hmm.
widen it or something,
Yep.
but then you can start seeing lean back angles. So I've been playing around a little bit more than the last time we talked. I don't know why I went on that tangent, but anyway, the
Yeah,
straight
it's
down
okay.
bar shot, you see the knee drive, right? The overhead
Mhm.
cam, the force plates, all those things are still in play. Let me
Yep.
do this,
And
Mike.
the grid, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
want force plates, so I want to know how long you're on the ground, how much force you exerted. I
Hmm.
want to be able to see all that stuff. Yeah, the grid. Oh, that's a great idea. Then let's do this. I want to share and we can talk through this. I
Okay.
prepared a little folder of I just saw uh Tamberi. Somebody did a post of
Hmm.
Gianmarco Tamberi, and this says Tamberi's best stuff. So this is unfortunately I can't ever get these any bigger when I import them from
Right.
here, but here is it says you can still hear me, right? If I turn this down?
Yep. Yep.
I need to, I don't know, it's playing really loud. Is there a way that I can mute the video without you and I want to be able to hear you, but I don't necessarily.
Um, I can't hear it, so
Okay.
I can hear you perfect though.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So this is Tamberi, and I've got a couple single armors. So I've been
Hmm.
showing them stuff, and I go, just some of the stuff that we keep talking about. I'm like, the knee drive across that line,
Hmm.
and this isn't even a good angle for it, but his knee is
Yeah.
all the way across, right? As he's
Hmm.
hitting vertical, right? So let me move this. I know this always messes me up. Okay. That was the finish. Okay, so here he is. That was the very first one, and I caught that great knee drive angle coming in. And I'm like, yeah, that arm, I would like to get it above your shoulder as the foot is hitting the ground, which you can see is, and then that trail leg, his drive knee is kicking him in the butt, which is really hard for a lot of
Yep.
the power types that want to scrape their feet. But
Yep.
if you watch Barshim, he doesn't do it. So I'm like, the thing that I teach is like, I go, it's universal. No matter how you use your arms, that knee drive better come up and across, or we are not going to get very high, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's, what is this? It says 2000 in 2016. So here's 235 in February. Can't see as much from this angle, but you can see a little bit of that lean back angle from this
Mm-hmm.
shot. You got to be able to stop it in the right spot there.
Yep.
And I like to line the upper body up even more, but excuse me, he's jumping 235. So you just shut up and you keep moving on.
Yeah, do what you gotta do, right?
Do what you got to do. And then the thing that's interesting to me about, there's another knee across shot right there. If I can get my hand to just move that tad bit more, where is it? Knee ride, which I
Mm-hmm.
just don't see amongst the single armors as much, but not always. Like Stefan Holm on that video
Mm-hmm.
with the Japanese guy and the stick, and they show him
Mm-hmm.
coming up in 240, and he matches the stick angle and he goes up. Now he pops his knee across as well as this and never does anything with it, just leaves it all the way
Mm-hmm.
up, lays back a little bit at the top. So there are single armors that ride the knee a lot. And it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
like he didn't have a good layout. But I mean,
Yeah.
Tam Berry here, that's a beautiful layout, but you can see he pops the hip early. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I've been teaching my guys, I go, if I think for what we're dealing with at the level that we're at, maybe I don't like them to have that line between your hip and the knee pointing at the ground. I'd rather have it, up parallel if you could wait longer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a whole other thing. But let's see. Here's a backside, just for giggles. And there, the one thing you can spot there is that knee. Again, it comes
Mm-hmm.
all the way across, even though you're at the wrong angle. So that's 238, right? So that was a new record, I guess. I'm guessing NR new record, new personal best at that time.
Mm-hmm.
236. This is in 2016 before the Olympics, and he was having a great year. I remember seeing
Mm-hmm.
him back, and he used to shave half of his face, right? All that crazy stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
Look at him drop into this turn. This is what I noticed about this one. If you watch
Mm-hmm.
him running in a straight line, all of a sudden, man, he just boom, right
Yeah,
there.
he
See that
puts
transition.
puts the foot down and drops. I mean, one of the things I always try and say is like hip down, shoulder down, because you just kind of want to. And a lot of times, because I use the turn mark or the mid mark too, and
Hmm.
especially working with multis and high jumpers still struggle with it too. Of like you're essentially starting your lean and your curve by the time you hit that mark. You're not
Yes.
hitting that step and then going in because you're going to
Yeah.
be a step behind and you're going to get too shallow and too close.
Yes. Yes. You got to
Yeah.
start cutting. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to
Leaning.
start that lean and get like by the time you hit that, you got to be in that curve because you're going to be late. And
Yeah.
the female high jumper that I've got, the one that I sent you the video of down in San Diego, that's
Hmm.
something that we've really been working on and trying to find consistency in is like, every single time you know that mid mark's coming. Once that right foot, well for her it's the left foot because she does 9, but or she's a yeah 5 and a 4. No, I can't remember the math, but anyways, yeah, it's you got to be in that lean because then that sets up everything for you and your
Yeah.
foot pressure, your lean, your body position all starts with you hitting that curve right.
Yeah.
And um, the other thing that we found too is every facility we go to, the surface is a little bit different, the track's a little bit different, so we're
Hmm.
coming in with a little bit more speed. You're able to, and you if you're not hitting your curve right and if you're not putting enough pressure in the ground, like you're going to
Yeah.
get pulled in no matter what. And
Yeah.
it's all about how you set that curve up. And I've
Yeah.
always said it's an order of operations event. It's all about how you push out the back. That sets you up to hit your intercept mark or your lean mark,
Hmm.
and then setting up the curve sets up the jump, and then puts you in the position to do everything else.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, you're spot on. All this stuff is right, and it's tough because every kid's individualistic, and you don't want to put them into the cookie cutter form and technique, but there's certain things that it's like, no, we have to hit these certain positions and these certain
Yeah.
things. Like that right there
That's
is
two
is
steps
pretty
away.
wild.
This is one of my
Yeah.
favorite things to look at because 2 steps away, most jumpers are in a fantastic position. And
Hmm.
then with 2 steps to go, they start to come out of it.
The
And so,
penultimate stand up. Yep.
yeah, this is where we want to continue through there.
Hmm.
Now, he doesn't do a heel toe on his penultimate. Well, he does. He actually managed to get a heel toe in there as
Hmm.
well with that high cycling. But right here, this is fascinating to me because I preached this for a while without having the confirmation, but I'm like, to me, I knew that in order to jump really, really high, you either, now you can do it two ways. You can get farther out and blow
Mm-hmm.
to vertical because, like what you were just talking about, Mike, is the quintessential thing. You go, everybody says, okay, as the bar goes up, what happens? I speed up. So as I
Mm-hmm.
speed up, I am going to have a wider base of my parabola along with a higher height that I reach.
Mm-hmm.
So unless I'm going to get better at hitting vertical as I run faster, my parabola should get wider and therefore I need to move back. And that's pretty much accepted by everybody within reason. But
Mm-hmm.
you can get, for whatever that athlete is used to and however they're used to dealing with their takeoff, you can get too fast and you're just going to
Mm-hmm.
go through it. You see people
Yep.
jump at the bar, they couldn't handle it. They bailed.
Mm-hmm.
I remember doing that at the Coliseum. I jumped 220 in my senior year, and one of the few times I think I ever jumped 220. It was a bad height for me for some reason, but I jumped on my first jump, and I was like, I think I opened at 215 too. So I went 215, 220, boom, boom. And I'm like, and just a week before I jumped 3.5. So I was like, okay, I'm kind of playing with house money here. I'm already in the NC2As and I'm like, let's go 225. I went right to 225 and I was on a roll. So I jacked up the speed and
Mm-hmm.
just couldn't handle
Blew
it.
through it.
I
Yep.
just couldn't handle it. And I remember, Dwight Stones was there doing something for Prime Ticket or something. And I'm down on the field and just my first jump I went through. And Dwight walked by and he goes, "You're running too fast, Troy." And I remember thinking, "Shut up, Dwight," and then, but the other part of my brain was like, yeah, I knew he was right, but I couldn't stop myself. It was like I
Mm-hmm.
had two more jumps and I just doubled down. Like I ran faster, and like, no, I was not a speed guy, number one. I've always been a power guy. So there was a certain limit to how fast I could run and negotiate the curve. But here's my
Mm-hmm.
thought. If you watch this, my thought was, as you're running towards the bar, you're creating your own worst enemy the faster you go. If you don't lean, like if I'm just running really
Mm-hmm.
fast and my head is directly over my foot when I put it down and I think vertical, you can tell someone jump straight up and they jump as straight up as they can at a high speed. But if they're not leaning, they're going to blow through. And so
Mm-hmm.
you're fighting that battle. Momentum, I always tell the kid it's a B word, with a like
That's right.
momentum will kill you because if you don't counter it with some forces going the other way, you're going that way. You
Yep.
cannot stop that train. I go, you guys are like bullet trains. You can't be stopped. So I'm like, we can if you lean back and get that foot out in front of you, that the penultimate into the longest and fastest step and get back behind that foot and hit, right? So I'm like, and I've been working for the last couple of years now on not just the drive knee and not just the arms coming across on that angle as best you can. Because I go, when you tilt like this, that's your new horizontal. And
Mm-hmm.
your vertical is still a perpendicular bisector of your shoulders. That is the new
Yep.
vertical that you need to operate on. You need to start jumping on that line. So if I can drive everything to that line or even across it on a lower angle, like the knee drive, fantastic. And then I started realizing your takeoff leg is involved. Like I used to
Mm-hmm.
think your left leg for me was just the workhorse that just, I just run and jump. That's it. I'm like, my right leg, I had to teach it to cycle. I had to teach it to drive across. I got to teach it to wait, get me all the way up to the top. And then I got to teach it to pop, and to
Mm-hmm.
drive down and go into my layup. And I thought the left leg was just doing the grunt work, but I realized that I need to push to the left off my left leg as well,
Mm-hmm.
integrating some of that. So anyway, I get after Aiden left, but no, it would have been that year. Jack Weissman, the kid from Huntington, you may have heard him talk about
Mm-hmm.
Jack. No,
Yeah.
because they were
Mm-hmm.
both in the same area. And then he jumped at UCSD for 4 years. So he would come through and I said, Jack, let's just do 5-step pop-ups, but I want you to run an aggressive curve. So run into your 5-step and then drop over. But I want you to take off on purpose, like a mile out, like 10 feet wide. So come in and just do a full pop-up, but I want you to drive inside as best you can. And so
Mm-hmm.
he followed through. Like he ran as fast as he could. He dropped into a nice lean and he jumped against the grain. And I said, the reason that most people don't do that is because they don't believe you when you tell them
Yep.
that they will still go into the pit. right? They don't
Yep.
believe you. I said, I have never seen anybody able coming from the left, from the right off their left foot to actually go left. They'll go up and they'll start to drift, right? So, and I've got video of both Jack and Kyle Jenkins, another guy who just jumped 7'3" a couple of weeks ago here at Cal State Long Beach.
Nice.
He jumped for me too, and he did the same drill. And I've got video of them hitting what I call inside vertical, where their toes
Mm,
coming off the ground and their body straight line inside vertical. Now, what happens after that is they continue to go up, they eventually hit vertical, and then they continue up and they go into the pit, or they could, but they wouldn't do it on this pop-up because I had them so far out. So
yeah.
I'm like, okay, I've seen that, but I have not yet seen it on a jump until I saw this video. Watch when he hits, boom, and he's coming up. I had it stopped almost at the right spot before, but you can see it right as you get to there. He's hitting as he's at
Hmm.
inside vertical. And then, of
Yep.
course, he's going to hit vertical and then he's going to go over. But
Hmm.
these are always the biggest jumps. Like I noticed it here. And I didn't know that Tamberry, number one, I didn't think I knew that he had made 239. So at the end of this video, they get a 239. There's 232 European Championships. Nah,
Hmm.
it's like what, 7, 7 1/4 or something. This
Yep.
239, new record. Bam. Watch the knee. Bam across. Slightly inside out. And the knee angle is so just pristine. Perfect. Bam.
Hmm.
There's that inside vertical right there.
Yep.
It's coming up. Okay. And then
Right.
high hip and everything else. Watch the 240. This is 240. Look at him inside out here. The toes almost off the ground. And then booyah, wait and pop. Good golly, look at the hip height. I can't believe he missed. I'm like, he
Right.
missed
Yeah.
that jump?
It's just
How did he miss that jump? Oh, so
snapped it just a little too early.
just a little, right? And if you
Hmm.
look also,
Just push the hips just a little bit.
how could that be too close?
Yeah,
Right?
definitely not.
He's a mile out there. But where did he catch it? It looks
I
like
think
hip.
it's his backside right
Yeah, got to
there.
be the hip. Yeah.
He may have been just, I mean, the takeoff spot's great, and that's probably where he needs to take off from with
Yeah.
that height. He may not have had enough speed coming in.
But the knees finish.
Yeah, the knees finish, and
What?
it's the backside. Just
This
that
made me an
little
even
extra.
bigger Tamberry fan. Look at this
Yeah,
angle here. And this is
yeah,
one where he
it's.
lines up his upper body with the lower body better than any of
Hmm.
the other ones I've seen. And that knee drive angle, that's the thing I preach all the time. But the inside out, man, I'm just like, this is my new training film. I'm telling you,
Hmm.
I'm breaking it down and taking the different shots. And if I hadn't done this, let me go here. I think I actually did that too. I pulled these up. I This is a habit I'm getting into is just stopping it on my phone and just
Screenshotting.
yeah, screenshot it right there. It's like
Yep.
this is what I want to show you, and I don't have to keep fighting the damn the thing as I'm trying to click on it. So that's that knee
Yep.
drive inside out, first time inside out vertical. What was this one? Same, right?
Hmm.
Great. And then I would put a circle around his foot. Notice how his takeoff leg, the first thing that comes up is the heel to the glute,
Hmm.
and the knee hasn't even come up yet, right? And I noticed that both with him and Stephen Holm. Stephen Holm, when you're watching that video, his right leg disappears behind him. It looks like he's got a half a leg, just like this.
Hmm.
Like, what happened to the other part of his leg? Oh, it's flying up, right?
Yeah, it's
So
right
amazing.
behind it driving.
Yeah. So I'm trying to, get this into, there's the knee drive across again, another
Hmm.
inside out vertical shot. So those are the things that I'm preaching. And I'm just like, I'm getting to a point where I'm like, I'm going to find the best film I can on everybody and do that and just go, here's that position I'm talking about. Here's that,
Hmm.
I do tend to be still, visually oriented. I'm not sure why I like that one. I think it was the knee across, but anyway, um,
Hmm.
yeah, that stuff is just, but I've seen both. So like you're saying, I
Hmm.
have had those days where I'm like, I'm either tired of videoing or I'm noticing when I get a certain amount of kids that it just bogs things down. And
Yeah, and
okay, we just
that's
need jumps. We need to get reps in, and I'm going to do the
yeah,
best I can to tell you what you're doing wrong, but let's get this, pick up the speed.
yeah. And then I mean that is the I guess the counterpoint to having the roster and having a bigger size roster is, we're trying to get jumps, and because of the nature and the structure of their day and their schedule and their classes and whatnot, we don't have the ability. I don't have the ability to stagger throughout the entire day.
Right.
So I've got my entire high jump group showing up at the same time, and it's okay. I got my girls jumping here. We're taking a few, and then the guys are jumping. They're taking a few.
Yeah.
And it's just, if they want to film themselves, that's great. Like, get the
Right.
film, set up your tripod, do whatever. And, some days I'm really good about it, and other days, it's just not happening.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it's, I see it a lot, and that's something that I'm really working on and trying to get creative. Our past conversations, we always talk about just getting creative and coming up with drills and finding
Yes.
drills to hit the points. And one of the ones that I've found recently, and I've seen it before, but I've never really implemented it, is it's called the DePena drill,
Hmm.
where you have like a PVC pipe, or they use a barbell, and you're
Right.
walking and you're feeling the lean, and you're visually seeing the lean and the angle of your shoulders with the bar, just to get the feel of like, okay, what's that position that we want to be in at takeoff, that negative vertical
Right.
position. And you do it walking, you do it jogging, you do it skipping, and then on jump days, it's like, okay, we're running the U drills, trying to feel that position all the way through. And then
Yep.
um, yeah, but the penultimate step is the one, like you said, that's that second to last step hits down, and the body starts to stand up because they're
Yeah.
wanting to preload and start to go. And it's just fighting, like you said, it's fighting those angles. It's fighting that momentum. That's, the big B word.
Like you said, the pain you there.
Mhm.
We did a clinic out here. I don't know if I told you about it ahead of time, but Alan Hankel, my old coach, who coached Doug Nordquist,
Mm,
Doug and I, Alan, and we got Jeremy Fisher in there, which was great. Anytime
nice.
Jeremy's around, I wish I was one of the kids because I just wanted to listen. But we ended up working the two of us together. There's three pits, so it was Alan and Doug on two on one pit, and then me and Jeremy on one, and we had another couple coaches over on the third pit. Uh, so as we're going through there, Jeremy went through some of that, and we were doing the
Mm,
curve. So he had them take the pipe up overhead like
yep.
this, do that too. So we did that version, which I like. Again, I don't like to. I always try to relate to them and say, it's a good drill, but you can't live on this drill. Like you couldn't just go, oh, first of all,
Right.
you can't use your arms at takeoff, and secondly, you can't really run normally. So I'm like, but I like the idea of it. Jonina
Hmm.
Brinson, I had her on, and she was doing one of those drills with a band, I think, with a band
Yep. I've done that too.
side, just pulling them like this. And I remember thinking, that's a kind of a cool drill, and that's what got me to ask her to, sit down. And she's just like, me, she's like, she just comes up with great ideas. And Jonina, if
Mm,
you're listening, I apologize. We tried to set one up earlier a couple months ago. She's up at Eastern Washington and schedules, this time of the year. And
yep.
I'm just
This
thankful that
time of
you
year
and
is
I were able
crazy.
to get this to work. But
Yeah.
yeah, that here's the last thought I'll leave you with. I've been tripling down on sequence because I still believe, you run your straight, you run your curve,
Hmm.
get your takeoff, you fly. And that's the only phase I tell the kids, the only phase that gets longer as you jump higher is flight. Everything
Yep.
else is going to get shorter, like it's going to get faster and quicker. But paradoxically, you're moving really fast, and bam, you get through. I'm like, now you got to be patient and let everything
Hmm.
take its time. So it actually time needs to slow down a little bit for you during flight. And then I contend that the layout should always be the same. Once
Hmm.
you get to the right position, you know, for me, I keep telling them if your head is broken through the vertical plane of the bar, it's a
Hmm.
tiny bit behind, so you have room for it to come down. You pull your shoulders and your head down. And if your knee, I would like to get the knee up to where the bar is. Now, here you watch,
Hmm.
I'm watching Tam Barry. I'm like, well, maybe it's not that important when you're running that fast. I might be
Hmm.
a double armor thing, like for me, but I still think it would apply, especially as the bar goes higher. I still think you need to ride the knee longer. Um,
Hmm.
I told you Elena Kulichenko on, and she's jumped
Hmm.
197. And we were
Yeah.
watching a video of her in the Olympics. And I said, man, this is such a great jump here. And I said, at the next height, your layout is perfect and everything, but you just can't quite get it. I said, what do you think you need to do to jump 2 meters? And she said, literally without me prompting, she said, I need to learn to leave my knee up longer. And I was like, yes, exactly what I think. But
You're like,
I
yep.
mean, she straight out of her mouth, it's like, because her layout is beautiful. If I had a layout
Mhm,
that good, I would be trying to get to it early also, but
mhm.
paradoxically, the earlier you get to it, the more you got to wait, right? So
Yeah, that's right.
the the triple down is this: is the sequence is huge, and for the beginners especially, but I still think even the highest level, I keep preaching now walkthroughs so that, and the story behind this is Barb, Bachoka came down, and when we were training just for a week or so, she said, "Can you write down all the little technical things that you've been telling me about each one of the phases?" And so it kind of forced me to coalesce everything into one document. And it's literally,
Mhm,
these are the 5 most important things about cycling as you're running your straight. This is what we need to think about on the curve. You do this, heel toe at the end, and then we're into takeoff mechanics, and there's all these things. And I go, once I looked at the list, I realized, first of all, there's no way that you can think about all those things as you're doing an actual jump.
yeah.
So if you had a checklist, I've realized that for a long time. If I tell a kid something, I go, "Hey, you're too far out." So, and that's rare for me. I say, far out, we need to speed up at the beginning, or we got to do this, right? But you also need to cycle your feet. I'd give them one, maybe adjustment spatially, which is just
Mhm.
go change your mark. And number two, do this one thing, especially if they're a male. Because if you're a male, it's
Yeah,
think about one thing at a time. If it's female,
that's very
maybe you get
true.
two, right? But it's
Yeah.
like that would be about it. So I realized if I want to work on my technique, I can either, and I know we do this as coaches, pick one thing and come up with a drill for it. And
Mhm.
sometimes, I'll do that. Somebody will be coming up and I'm like, "Dude, you keep doing this one thing." So I'll immediately stop and go do drills and do like a couple of, maybe I grab 3 hurdles and I go, "We need to do this. I want you to lean back, heel toe, and try to hit vertical." We'll do 3 hurdles in a row. It doesn't have to be real high, or maybe just keep bumping up. And then I get done with that. I say, "Okay, now remember what we just did and why we did it. Bring them back." And that's just one little aspect, right? But on a walkthrough, I can literally go through the checklist. And so let's do your
Mhm.
first 5 steps. Cycle your feet. Okay, your foot kicks you in the butt, your knee comes up, your arms are swinging, you're accelerating as you go. Okay, but if you're going slow enough, you can do everything. And so now you get on
Mhm.
your curve, imitate your curve, and then do your arm sequence. Because a lot of guys, I get them, I said, you're a double armor. You need to use your arms. But sometimes their arms are gathered. Sometimes they gather and reach back. Sometimes they do a little hesitation move. Sometimes they don't do anything. They forget. And
Mhm.
all of a sudden, one arm's a little bit out in front and one arm's over here. I'm like, "Dude, your arms are changing every time. And it's driving me nuts." So you got to figure out one way to, if you're going to be a double armor, be a double armor. If you want to go single, you tell me and we'll figure it out.
Yeah,
I can teach
right.
either one, but you can't be a wild card.
Mhm.
Nobody's that good. You can't come up and change, all these variables as you're going. But I'm
Mhm.
saying as you're doing the walkthrough, you can really get it, because my golf coach told me the same thing. He said, "Look, if you can't do it slow, there's no way you can do it fast. If you're going to do your positioning, do it perfect slow." So
Mhm.
I'll have them literally, you'll see some posts where I'm starting to do that. Show them walk, curve, get to the plant, lean back as much as you can
Mhm.
with no speed, heel toe, arm and knee drive up, turns you back to the bar, kind of go up, and then I'll have them bend their takeoff leg, which I've noticed on film now. I've been watching this for a while that everybody bends their takeoff leg almost immediately. It depends on
Mhm.
the angle and everything, whether sometimes it's too fast. But I think usually if you're right next to the bar and all that, that leg swings up. And if that leg kicks the pit, you're in trouble. But if you're far enough
Mhm.
apart, it doesn't matter. And you have to get shorter as soon as you leave the ground. So it makes sense. That leg's going to swing up. So I go, "Okay, swing that leg up and then pop your hips forward and try to hit as much of your layout." And if you want to do it in your room so you're right next to your bed in case you fall over, fine. But if you're out in space, do the best that you can, do it slow.
Yep.
And that way they're going through the exact sequence of movements, you know, reviewing
Mhm.
all the little technical points and, again, practicing perfect technique, which I think there's, your and my job is made complicated by the fact that we're creating new neural pathways and getting the muscle patterns to fire. And they've done work on this now where they put electrodes on people and they can visualize and actually get the muscles to innervate as they're
Mhm.
thinking about it without even actually doing it. There's actually
Yep.
neural activity running to the as it's picturing this whole thing. You're like, well, wouldn't be doing a walkthrough or even a slow jog through doing the same thing, but a little bit better. So I've been putting a lot of emphasis into that, and I think it's paying off. I think the kids are, and I tell them, I go, hey, the worst thing we can do is overtrain you. So if you're having one of those days where your legs are killing you, I said that should be walkthrough and pit day and maybe core or
Mhm.
something, right? So we don't
Yeah.
kill your shins into jelly. There's no point continuing to jump when you can't do it. But going over the concepts again, reviewing the positions and everything, that's important. So that way
Yeah.
we can, do that.
Uh, as you were talking about just the walkthrough and the visual and all of those things, we were at the Armory this year for indoor, and Dontavius Hill came, and there was like three guys that were jumping in this elite,
Mm-hmm.
flight, and between every single jump for Dontavius Hill, this is during competition. This isn't warm up. Between every single jump, he is walking his approach,
Mm-hmm.
feeling his lean, and he gets into that leaned back, leaned out position, and he has his hands up after he's driven them up, and he is like watching the bar, visualizing, and you can see him processing and thinking about his layout
Mm-hmm.
and the finish. And I had never seen that in high jump before. Like between each event, he is legitimately walking, run, and doing it. And then after he does it, walks back to his step, takes a little bit of a mental break, resets, and then he's on his mark and he goes.
Yeah.
And it was, that's something that I think I've picked up because I, follow him on Instagram, and I've seen him at a couple of meets out this way, and he just, yeah, you never see that from a high jumper in a in meet situation where you're
Yes.
just like, yep, I'm gonna go do it.
Yeah.
Um, and I think you're right. It's continually solidifying in your brain and through the your muscle connection and all those things, and the neural system of like, this is what I'm going to do,
Yes.
and I'm visualizing it and I'm walking it, and then like your golf coach said, if you can't do it slow, you can't do it fast.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. Getting away from the run through where a lot of different things can happen and change and whatnot, doing the walkthrough where you have all the control in the world to hit exactly what you need to do is
Yeah.
is 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 definitely key. So
Still need to be able
that
to do
might
the
be
full
something that,
sequence. Yeah, but
yeah.
I mean, it's hard. I remember
Mhm.
I either A would run out of energy or B, I get bored after I
Yeah.
watch 5 or 6 run throughs, so it's like,
Hmm.
and like you said, the faster you're moving, there could be something wrong where I'm like, hey, there's another thing we'll talk about. We'll have to do another time, but I
Yeah.
have a new thing that I'm really emphasizing as you start running the curve that I actually stole, as all great things are,
Yep.
from Nicole Romani from Italy, because I watched her at her home facility where she looks like if she ran her approach correctly, she would be running right down a wall. Because
Mm.
if you don't know this, okay, I'm just talking to everybody again in podcast land. But if you're in an indoor facilities, there's usually not a lot of room. So whatever you're looking at on video, it's way smaller than that. So you're, she's running and it looks like she would be running down the wall, but she's actually angled away from the wall. So she's running
Mm.
towards the wall and then hits her mark and runs a really nice curve. And I've been thinking, why don't I just swing that straight part in just a little, and it'll make me start turning early before I get to my curve, maybe a step early, and I'm starting to drop in already. And I'm having
Mhm.
good success with that. But the walkthrough sequencing, like you said, you brought up an interesting little nugget there, because I always teach them, I go, look, they've done all these studies, the classic basketball free throw study, where they said
Mhm.
one group's a control, the other group is the test subjects, they get to practice. The visualization group was a surprise group. You visualize, but you don't practice. And who got better? The practice group and the visualization group showed about the same improvement. And the ones that were the controls that didn't practice, they stayed the same. So
Mhm.
they recreated that study over and over and over, doing many different things. And then you just watch any sport, watch the golfers. What are they doing? They're doing little practice swings before they go.
Mhm.
A precise sequence right before they pull the trigger, where it's literally
Yep.
the same thing every time. And I remember watching Mark Jackson when he was in college at St. John's, put the ball under his arm, and then he'd sit there for a second, and then he'd go like this, and then he would go 1, 2, 3, boom. And he was like a career 85% free throw shooter,
Mhm.
both college and pro. And I'm like, the strength of it is so just, going through it over and over, knowing exactly what you expect to do next. So your brain is completely unconfused. If you're frantic and your brain's going a million miles an hour and you got adrenaline going through you and there's loudspeakers and there's all this stuff and you're at the first time at a really big meet, you need to be able to step back and go, okay, what am I doing? You know, oh yeah,
Hmm.
I'm doing the high jump. How do I do that? Well, let's just walk it through real quick, and
Yeah.
hopefully you don't wait for the 1 minute when they stop.
Yeah.
And that's going to wrap it up for us here on another episode of Raise the Bar. Once again, I'm your host, Troy Haynes, and I was joined this evening by Mike Ashton, who is the jumps coach and the Dex and multis coach, Dex and Heps, sorry, at the Army for Army. And this is actually about 2 weeks later. Mike and I were having a great podcast, creeping up on 2 hours, and all of a sudden, right at the end, the my computer died. So we were talking. My screen went dark. I actually had the power cord plugged in. I thought we might go long, and the power cord that I chose wasn't sending enough juice. So we we ate up whatever extra got into the during the podcast, and then it ran out. So anyway, we had a great session talking with Mike, and want to thank him again for spending his time with us, especially all the way from the East Coast. And we talked on many topics to review, the new roster limits and what we thought was going on, with NIL money, what was going to happen in the next couple of years. So take a listen. Always love having you guys check in. If you get a minute, please hit the subscribe button down at the bottom for the Sky High and Fly Jump Lab podcast. Raise the Bar. You can subscribe to the channel and look for. I usually post the videos of the podcast first on YouTube, and then Barbara, my strong right arm, will take those and change them into the podcast that you can listen to in your car, or as you're whatever you're spending an hour or so listening to, you like to listen to us, then you can get the audio version and check that out. And we're always glad to have you. We're going to start this week doing the Raise the Bar. I don't want to know if we call it the mailbag or just questions for the Sky High and Fly Jump guy, which is me, Troy Haynes. But if you have questions that you desperately would like answered, send them in. We're getting close to the end of the season for many of the athletes, not just my high school kids, but the college kids that I have. They're coming up on their conference meets, and right after conference will be NC2A divisions 1, 2, 3 on down the line. Whatever the next step up is there's a national version, then we're getting ready for those. Both, high school, we get the regional, there's CIF for us here in California. I don't know what it's called in your state, but then CIF is followed by another big qualifier meet, and then state finals. I was bemoaning the fact that we don't technically have a national final, but New Balance, Nike, these other Reebok, they're stepping up and creating their own, over the summer, these nationals that you can qualify for. And so there kind of is, so we're getting to that point. And for young athletes that don't have a lot of experience, if you have questions, what should I be doing with my training? What should I do to recover from injury? Is this technical thing that I'm doing, does it work? What do you think? So yeah, send those questions in, and we'll be happy to answer them on the next episode that we're going to call, again, Ask the Sky High and Fly Jump Guy or something like that. So if you get a great idea for that, put them in my DMs. Again, the Raise the Bar podcast is an offshoot of Sky High and Fly Jump Lab. Follow me on Instagram and, send me a DM, and I'd be happy to answer your questions on the show. Until next time, which is shortly, actually going to be in just a few minutes, I'm going to be doing a podcast with one of my former athletes, Malachi Carrasco. Until that next time, we will be seeing you here on the next episode of Raise the Bar with Troy Haynes. Until then, so long.